In America, there are 11 million people that identify as LGBT. Even though it's only 4.5% of the population, that's a big number.
We are progressively seeing more representation in TV and media. This has had a huge effect on our generation's view of the LGBTQ+ community and helped develop the mindset that even if we aren't affected by the problems, they're worth fighting.
Having more visibility in the media, not just like these tragic depictions of queer love, but also, people just existing in day-to-day life, because that's all we're really doing.
To give you an understanding of the road the LGBTQ+ community has taken, we need to talk about the history of gay rights. We'll start in 1953, when President Eisenhower passes a law banning homosexuals from working for the federal government. In the 1960s, the women's rights movement became a home for the LGBTQ+ group, and they joined the movement for equal rights. In 1961, Illinois becomes the first state to legalize homosexual relationships. On June 27, 1969, the Stonewall riots break out in New York City between gay customers of the Stonewall Inn and the police, marking the modern movement for civil rights among gay and lesbian Americans. The riots occur after the police raid the inn and arrest patrons who are dressed in clothing of the opposite gender. A year and a day later, on the first anniversary of the Stonewall riots, 3,000 gay rights activists marched from Greenwich Village to Central Park in New York City, creating the first annual Pride Month. We've come a long way since then, and more rights have been given to the LGBTQ+ community. But what we want now is a guarantee that those can't be taken away from us, and that can be done with the Equality Act.
There is still work to be done with regard to gay rights. There is still work to be done when you consider that LGBTQ people in this country are still not guaranteed permanent federal protection against discrimination.
All people, regardless of gender or sexual identity, deserve the same rights. Yet 30 states still lack discrimination protections against LGBT people. This means that you can be fired, evicted, or even denied adoption rights just because of who you are.
We live in a state where we can be fired at any moment for being LGBT. We can try to adopt children, and they can tell us that we disagree with your values, even though it's a state-funded program. We live in a state where our landlord can kick us out if they find out that we're dating someone that is the sexual orientation or gender identity that bothers them.
What concerns me the most about resources and accessibility for the LGBTQ+ community is healthcare and health services. With the Health and Human Service grant funds, there's no way for them to not discriminate against the LGBTQ+ community. So a lot of times, those that are identifying within the community, they're already scared and skeptical of going and getting healthcare. Now with these grant funds and being able to discriminate against the community, it now prolongs their service.
People feel like our existence threatens their identity in some way or makes them question their identity in a way that's unacceptable.
Since 2015, there have been 125 reported deaths of trans women of color. One of these women, Islan Nettles, was walking down a street when she was stopped by a group of men. After finding out that Islan was a transgender woman, they brutally beat her and she died a week later from injuries.
Trans women are women. And then when someone finds out that they're trans women, then they're enraged, they're upset, and feel like they have something to prove, and then they want to harm that person. When they were just walking up the street trying to get home. This is a prime example of a story of someone just trying to get home and just walked up the wrong block at the wrong time.
More than anything, I want to stop going to events where we name off lists of people that we lost to murder or suicide the year before. Things like the Equality Act would really provide a sense of safety to people like us in a red state where sometimes it feels like we may never make progress.
The Equality Act would take and add to the 1964 Civil Rights Act. It would add sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. So that means you would not be able to discriminate against somebody in employment, in housing, any public services. Anytime tax dollars are used, you would not be able to discriminate against them.
One reason people argue against the Equality Act is they believe it would take away the religious freedom. For example, Representative Doug Collins believes that the Equality Act hurts the religious community.
because the bill actually says if you receive federal money, you fall under this. Do they then have to violate their own faith beliefs? Making one group of people deny their faith while trying to give another one a leg up is still wrong. It's not equal.
Built into it, there are what's called faith exemptions. In other words, you know, if a church doesn't want to hire an LGBT person, they don't have to. If a church doesn't want to serve an LGBT person, they don't have to. If they don't want an LGBT person in their church, they don't have to. You know, in their mosque or their synagogue. It has those religious exemptions.
See this book right here? This is called the Bible. And it says in the Bible that God created man and woman in his image, that marriage was intended first and foremost between a man and a woman. Well, if this Gender Equality Act becomes law, you can say goodbye to the Bible. You can say goodbye to the idea of Christianity or Christian values or what God's words are.
Let's just all be humans here and realize that we're all pursuing happiness together.